This bright blue relic cost me less than a fast food meal, and today we're bringing it back to life. Hey everyone, Retro Tech Dad here, and what do you know, I've got a new package here for us to unbox together. And you might be thinking, did Rob order something from Hallmark for the channel? And no, unfortunately, if you were hoping for that, I'm sorry to disappoint, since what I've actually got here is a purchase that I made on eBay. So I was trying to find a Windows laptop for as cheap as possible on the website, and came across something that caught my eye. And that's partly because it's quite literally eye-catching, with a pretty bold color that definitely stands out from a sea of typical gray and black laptops. So here is the HP Stream 11 that I purchased for a whopping $8 off eBay. Yes, that's the number 8, which you can count on your fingers. And look, this is kind of insane to me, as at least according to the eBay description and based on the pictures, it's a fully working laptop computer for less than the price of a McDonald's Big Mac meal and countless other fast food meal options, at least where I live in Arizona. Now, this particular HP Stream 11 is a fairly old model, and I believe this specific one originally released way back in 2014, and so it's understandable that it's not going to cost someone a fortune to acquire one of these today, especially since HP's Stream lineup of laptops were always positioned as a budget option that still exists to this day. It was basically a Windows laptop designed to compete with the cheap Chromebooks of that time. It's a surprisingly attractive looking unit with this bold blue color that has a gradient design on the inside, and everyone that actually walked past my office at home was immediately drawn to its design. These also shipped in a pretty bold pink color as well. I will say it definitely feels fresh and charming even in today's world. This particular unit is in better shape than I was expecting as well, with some obvious wear and tear especially on the lid, but it's actually not too bad overall. So what do we get specs-wise for a budget laptop that once cost only $199 back in 2014, the equivalent of $286 in 2026? And if you guessed nothing particularly exciting, you definitely guessed right, since what we have here is an 11.6-inch display that is, as expected, nothing to write home about, with a whopping resolution of 1366 by 768. And it definitely comes complete with limited viewing angles that 12 years later still plague cheap HP laptops like we saw in that Walmart HP special that I just looked at recently on the channel. Now under the hood, we've got an RTD potato certified Intel Celeron N2840 dual core processor that is part of the Bay Trail family of Intel chips, and this Celeron boosts up to 2.58 GHz with only a 7.5 watt TDP. It features the Intel HD graphics with a max frequency of 792 MHz, and this is certainly going to be a fun one to explore, and never have any doubt, we will definitely explore some type of gaming with it. Beyond that, we've got 2 whole gigabytes of RAM, and a massive 32 gigabytes of internal flash storage, which is hilarious considering I have computers here that have more RAM than this does storage. For a budget laptop release in 2014, this one came with some interesting ports, including a full-size HDMI out, which is a pleasant surprise, 2 USB-A ports, one of which is a USB 3.0 port, a 3.5mm headset port, and then a full-size SD card reader, which is going to be very much needed given the limited storage here. And then a barrel jack port for power, and this particular listing did not ship with the power adapter, so I will be needing to pick one up. But before I do some additional shopping, let's just give this HP Stream some much needed TLC. I'm gonna go ahead and grab some of my trusty wipes that I always keep on hand thanks to my 4 dogs. They are truly the gift that keeps on giving with all the fur that ends up on my recording table. Now, as I said, this unit does have some scuffing on the lid and in other places, so it won't buff out, but it's not too bad. And this definitely benefited from a good wipe down, since there's definitely evidence of dirt on the actual wipes, and so it's always a good idea to give the extra treatment when buying something secondhand. But let's enjoy a quick moment with some soothing sounds so we can get this all cleaned up fully, and then we'll go under the hood. So as I mentioned, this unit did not ship with a power adapter, but there's actually one other issue with this laptop, and at least according to the listing, the battery is no longer operational. And so what I want to do now is go inside and take a look at that battery as well as poke around at some other things. Now at first glance, it looked simple enough and unassuming, and so I first removed the visible screws, and yes, I said visible because this laptop does have a few that are concealed. which I figured out once I got those initial screws out and the unit wouldn't budge, but particularly when my pick snapped in half trying to pry it open in the back corner. And so even someone who has disassembled many things in the past, there are memorable moments like this that just serve as a learning experience. So it turns out there are actually 4 more screws that were hidden away under the back rubber feet, as well as these random pieces of rubber that were right behind the back feet. And so I just went ahead and gently removed all of these so that I could save them for when I reassembled the unit. This laptop actually opens up from inside the chassis where the keyboard area is, and so once you get that out and disconnect the cables, we're then able to see the inside of the unit, and there are some sad realities with this unit, including both the soldered RAM and storage, which means that we are obviously stuck with what's here. No worries, I didn't have a lot of expectations going into this, but now we do have access to the battery compartment, which I can now jot down that exact model number so that I can then go on Amazon and get myself a replacement battery for this, which isn't the cheapest option necessarily, but I wanted something faster, and so the extra few dollars were worth it considering I was only $8 into this project. Now, speaking of making some purchases, I actually used this as an opportunity to source a compatible power adapter, which hilariously cost the same as this entire laptop did. And so another $8 for the power adapter, and then another $25 for the new battery. And so when all said and done, I spent $41 to get this back to life, and realistically, an entire functional, at least I hope, laptop for $41 complete with a fresh battery seemed pretty reasonable to me. Thanks to the power of editing, you luckily don't have to sit here and wait 2 days with me for the goodies to arrive.
2 days later.
And here I have the new battery ready to go. It's almost like time never passed. And so I proceeded to get this new battery installed and then partly reassemble the laptop just in case the new battery had any issues. And this also gives me an opportunity to test the new power adapter that I purchased for this to ensure that we can obviously charge the battery. Now, I do want to say that I honestly could have just removed the battery and skipped replacing it and just used it directly powered with the adapter and saved myself the money. But really, where's the fun in that? And I also think it's kind of cool to restore this to its former glory. That is, if it actually had any to begin with. But you know what? We don't judge here on this channel. And so, the moment of truth has arrived. And what do you know? It does in fact work, and we have signs of life. And it does look like Windows is still installed on here and working. In fact, this unit was never wiped prior to being sold, and so the prior owner of this laptop still has their info on here. And so I'm going to go ahead and wipe this install, but for those that know me, already knew that I was going to do that anyways. So for this laptop, I decided to go with Tiny 10, and given the limited amount of RAM, we definitely want something lightweight like this. There's a few options I had considered, but just ultimately settled on this as I know that all the drivers are available and this should be relatively painless. Of course, who am I kidding? It was not, and for whatever reason, the touchpad was not working after a fresh install, and apparently it's a known issue with these laptops, and so they require a specific Intel driver to be installed before the system can detect that there is in fact a touchpad. And so after some effort, I did get it working again. Other than that, things went pretty smooth, and now I have a very clean install of Windows, and you know what that means. It's time for some gaming. And of course, if you ever wondered what kind of gaming we can actually do with an $8 laptop purchased off eBay that comes packed with an Intel Celeron N2840, I'm just gonna say it right now. Temper your expectations, since not only is this a really cheap used laptop off eBay, but it's now 12 years old, and even at the time of its release, it was super underpowered and unimpressive. The Celeron N2840 is truly a potato designed for the most minimal of tasks, which surprisingly it does okay with even in 2026, especially with the right build of Windows or perhaps a flavor of Linux. But of course, that's not going to stop me and those who believe in the pursuit of gaming on potato PCs. And as I always say, anything can game, it's just a matter of adjusting your mindset in terms of what can be played. This laptop is the perfect candidate for much older games, and since we've got access to the enormous library that the PC affords us, there's plenty of options here. Naturally, I had to start off with the tried and true and find out if it can in fact run Doom, and you better believe it. But that's almost a given, considering Doom runs on just about everything, including a Kindle. But what's remarkable is that even Source Engine games like Half-Life 2 and Portal will run here with the lowest settings possible, and a few tweaks to make it run a bit smoother, like capping the frame rate. You can definitely enjoy amazing games like this on a truly potato laptop. It's amazing what fun can be had for cheap. Now, a lot of the older indie style games will work well here, like SteamWorld Dig, which is another great option for a laptop like this since it's not very demanding, but something like SteamWorld Dig is such an awesome game that again shows us what can be done with underpowered hardware without breaking the bank. I want to dig deep into some much older games that maybe no one talks about anymore, and I think a lot of games that had PC ports during the Xbox and PlayStation 2 generation could possibly fare well here with an underpowered laptop like this. And so I tried out an old gem from Neversoft called Gun, which is a PS2 and Xbox era game, and what's cool is that it runs decently here because it is a native PC version. And what's funny is that if we were to try this with, let's say, PlayStation 2 emulation, it would definitely not work at all, and so it's cool to explore the vast library that a PC can provide us. Now, speaking of emulation, naturally, I had to try that out here with this laptop. And of course, when it comes to the previously mentioned PS2 emulation, you can forget about it. But that's to be expected. What I didn't expect is that even Dreamcast was pretty brutal here, and I think it's just the fact that I don't remember just how truly underpowered this Celeron N2840 really is. And look, it's a 7.5 watt chip from 2014. I'm not gonna hold anything against it, but that doesn't mean that emulation isn't a possibility here, as there's tons of platforms to enjoy, and so something like PlayStation 1 emulation will do very well here, and it's no secret just how many games are available to us on that console. But then there's basically the vast library of games from generations prior, like Super Nintendo, NES, Genesis, and all of that goodness, which will fare very well here. And so we just keep adding on to the potential amount of games that can be enjoyed on this HP stream from 2014. Now, what did surprise me was the performance of PlayStation Portable with PPSSPP. And I will admit, I tested this platform first with this laptop. And so I kind of worked backwards since I typically like to push the hardware first, just get a feel for where it might land in terms of performance. And that probably explains why I was a bit bummed about Dreamcast, but PSP does fare a lot better. Of course, you won't be playing God of War Chains of Olympus on this, but lighter to even medium games will run, and some even will run at 2 times the native resolution, which is kind of wild and a testament to just how good of an emulator PPSSPP truly is. But this also unlocks a lot more of the current games that received a PSP port that otherwise would not run as a native PC game, or even on a different platform through emulation. So this was a fun experiment, and you know what that means, it's the end of this video, and I will say that it's been fun to just see how far we can push this humble laptop. And it's truly amazing how much can still be done with it even after all of these years. And I think it just shows us that at least when it comes to gaming, fun can be had for cheap, and even on underpowered devices like this. Let me know down in the comments if you were surprised by what this budget laptop from 2014 is still capable of, or the fact that it even still works. I hope you enjoyed this video, and until the next one, as always, I am the Retro Tech Dad, and thank you so much for watching.